Hi there, folks. Today we are going to start a story that is going to go for a couple days, and it is a really interesting one. It's about a girl whose name was Esther. And Esther didn't live in the land of Israel, where most of the stories in the Bible take place. Her story takes place a little bit to the east of that, in a kingdom called Persia. We call it Iran now. But it was at the time one of the most powerful, strong, rich, huge, impressive kingdoms that there were in the entire world. And the king was an amazingly powerful, rich person. What he said went, and nobody would ever argue with him. We forget sometimes that God's people live in all sorts of different places, in all sorts of different situations. They don't just live like we do, or they didn't just live like David and Josiah did in Jerusalem. God's people live all over the world. They live in India, in Japan, in China, in Brazil. There are even God's people in Antarctica. Well, Esther was living not in Antarctica, but she lived in Persia. And at the time, there was a rich and powerful king of Persia whose name was Xerxes. That begins with an X. Xerxes. Xerxes. It's a good name to know if you do crossword puzzles. And Xerxes had many wonderful things, but the one thing he didn't have was a queen. He had had a falling out with his other queen, and she ended up in a dungeon. Many beautiful women came to meet the king and to see whether they could be the new queen. Each one dreamed she might be, and they went through months of preparation before they were even introduced to the king. Well, one day, the king met a beautiful young woman whose name was, now come on, I told you earlier, what was her name? Esther. And he thought she was the most beautiful woman in all the land. And the king knew that Esther would become his queen. But there was a lot to do before she could be crowned. And it took nearly a year to get everything ready. But in the meantime, here he is. It's like giving her a diamond ring, like an engagement ring. And she's blushing and she's happy. I mean, hey, who wouldn't be? She gets to be the queen in the most rich, powerful, exotic country that was on the face of the earth at that time. And King Xerxes, yeah, it might be a little bit difficult to spell his name, but you could get used to that. Well, during the year that Esther was getting ready to marry King Xerxes, she stayed at the palace. Up until then, she had lived with her cousin Mordecai. And Mordecai loved her very, very much. Mordecai trusted and believed in God. And Mordecai taught Esther to love God too. And that was going to be very important in the rest of the story, because Esther was going to have to learn, well, I won't tell you that part, but it was going to be very important what Mordecai taught her. And we'll hear more about that tomorrow night. Same channel, same time, same place. All right? And in the meanwhile, why don't you go find, not tonight, but tomorrow, find a map and see if you can find Persia on the map and see where that was. Just a fun thing to do. maps can be fun to look at too. All right, till then, sleep well and get some good rest. And tomorrow, have a really great day. Good night.